What she got to say?
What did she not have to say? She didn't mention you though. Well, no, she did about the hour. She said she didn't mean to call you, but you know how that goes. And she said, you don't get anybody that wants to, and in one big lot, take everything she has for sale. Send her somewhere. She's ready for that house to be cleaned out and sold.
Because the Wednesday test,
She said she's looking on the west coast.
the materials,
She wants to be close to her.
it's not your typical test that I give. It's going to require some reading and studying and studying and paying attention.
She said due to maybe health insurance reasons, she won't be able to leave. She's active next semester, because of that.
12 and 13? On Wednesday night?
12 and 14?
No, 13, because I think we're testing this Wednesday.
I took mine to the.
It'll be a test on the 15th.
My evaluation for Lily. And
Yeah, I missed the points.
So let's just concentrate on this week. Let's get this one done and caught up where we need to.
you know what actually does that?
Well, that test is, like I say, it's not the hardest I've ever given, but it's a little harder than what I normally give. It's got some very abstract management concepts in it.
And it says humanities.
If you all are like me, and abstract management concepts sometimes can be a bear. Hello, Bentley.
Hello.
Turn the volume up, can't hear you. Not you.
Hello.
All right, good. That's better. I can hear you now. How's everything in Beckley?
Looking good so far.
Good, good. Are you all ready for summer?
Oh, yes.
We're ready to get the heck out of here.
I gotta turn this. I can see the back of my head and know that my camera ain't right. For those of you in Beckley who have been trying to keep up and ask, I was told on Friday that they started the background investigation for the hiring process for me. Now, they haven't offered me the job or haven't offered me a job, but they have started the background.
Are you gonna pass it?
Lord, I hope. They just did this. That's what I told that lady in Human Resources. She called me Friday morning and was asking me a couple questions. And I said, I understand why you're doing it again, but you all just did this to hire me to start with, not, 8 months ago? In August? 9 months ago? And I said, so, the only thing that's changed in my life from now to then is I started working here. So if I don't pass it, there's a problem. But yeah, I think that will be. I think it's just a matter of time before they offer the job. We'll just have to, But I understand why they go through those background checks and be rigorous with them. You don't want just anybody standing up in front of a classroom. It should be that way. Same way with police work. When you get into police work, they do an extensive background check on you, and sometimes it gets a little mundane, and you think, well, one of my people was doing a background check for a job up in the Panhandle for a police officer's job, and they could see in her background where she moved from West Virginia to I think she said like Minnesota or somewhere for a couple of years, and they asked her why she moved out there, and she said because I was 3. That's where my parents went. My dad got a job out there, and I kind of went along with him because I was like 3. And they were like, oh, okay, we didn't realize you were that young. And she's like, yeah, I might have been 4, And so, you start to ask those questions about, it starts to get a little mundane, but they should do due diligence to check on everybody before they hire police officers and correctional officers and federal agents of all kinds. We need to know who we're entrusting authority to, right? We don't need to entrust authority to people who are going to abuse that authority. Now, does that not mean there should be some differences in our background? Absolutely. Just, we don't necessarily want an outlaw.
What do you
do you all
think
think?
of all these mass shootings that's went on since our last class?
Yeah, I was gonna ask I was gonna ask a question before I got to that, and I was kind of waiting for some of the others to come filing in, but it is 11:01. I was gonna have that discussion about those mass shootings, that had happened since our last class and since we talked before I got back into some of the notes. Because I think I wanted to see how it related to the work we did on those mass shootings. But I want to ask your opinion first. I want to go through the room and I want to get some ideas. I want to know what your all's opinion is. If you do a background investigation on me, you are the background investigator for the West Virginia State Police or for the FBI, it doesn't matter, whoever, but a premier law enforcement agency. And I've applied and I'm doing the background check, and you ask me, have you ever smoked marijuana? And I said, I'm 40 years old. And I tell you, yes, when I was 20 years old and I was in college, I smoked marijuana probably once a week the whole 4 years I was in college. Should that automatically disqualify me from being a state trooper, a federal agent? Why or why not? I got a problem.
No.
I don't think it should.
No, it shouldn't.
Why not?
Because we all do things in our life that ain't right. Just because you know you made a bad choice once shouldn't exclude you from everything in life.
Well, but I didn't make a bad choice once. I made a bad choice for the whole 4 years I was in school.
So you should pay the rest of your life for it?
Well, I don't know. I'm asking you. Where's the threshold? Where's the
No, you
threshold?
shouldn't.
Where's the threshold in drug use? Where's the threshold that we need to? Where's the standard we as law enforcement need to hold our fellow officers to? That's what I'm getting at. Where's the standard?
I wouldn't consider that a chronic user. I mean, if you stopped after college, got a job, passed all your drug tests, I don't consider that a chronic user. You're not someone who depends on it.
Plus, that's still an adolescent part of life.
Exactly.
Where, you haven't fully grown up.
Should there be any weight given to the amount of time that I stopped using and to the age that I am now? In other words, if I stopped using at 25 and I'm 40 now, would that be viewed as a more positive thing than somebody who stopped at 25 and they're 30?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's interesting. All right, I just wanted to throw that out and see where y'all were at. It's a good gauge of where society is at as far as drug use goes.
Well, and that's a real touchy issue right now because society has totally changed from what they was 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, I agree, and the viewpoint on marijuana in particular is changing too. Well, let me ask you another question. If I were to apply to a state agency or to a federal agency and it came out in my interview that I was gay, should that be a deciding factor in whether or not you're going to hire me at all? Should it be
Yes,
something
against the
used
law.
to consider my employment, or should it be information that should be discarded?
Discarded.
It's discarded. I mean, that's actually law.
Well, I'm sure it's law, but we've talked about biases and people carrying their backpack with them. We know they don't. Why should it be discarded? Aside from the fact that it's law, why should it be discarded, or why should it be? All right, let me ask you this.
That's not going to make or break you being an officer. I mean,
It affects it in no way.
Yeah, exactly.
So, well, let me ask you this then. Let me throw a curveball. I'm going to apply to the federal prison over here in Welch. The men's prison. And I am openly gay. How does that affect your decision to hire me or not?
Still doesn't.
What's the difference of you being openly gay and a female walking into an all-male prison?
Exactly.
There's still the possibility.
That's a very interesting question. One of the biggest problems that Virginia and West Virginia have inside their state prison systems is women working inside those men's prisons. I can't tell you how many females are escorted out of both West Virginia and Virginia prisons for establishing inappropriate relationships with inmates on a regular basis.
I've seen men being
Yeah,
escorted
it's
out.
not just women, it's men too.
I've seen unit managers being escorted out in handcuffs by state police because of what they've done. It goes both ways.
Yeah, hell, the jail here in Beckley's paid off close to $1 million in lawsuits for the exact same thing.
Yeah, I'd like to challenge every once in a while. I like to have that conversation to see where you're at and kind of judge. We had a county on the Virginia side not too many years ago. It's been several now. Time slips away from me, but the sheriff's son was the chief jailer. And all of a sudden, the more attractive women that was getting out of jail started having babies. And when they started doing paternity tests, they all tracked back to the chief jailer. So they got, the county got sued, and the sheriff lost an election, and that young man got arrested and put in jail himself. So ethical issues shouldn't be tied in with someone's sexual preference, and I agree with where you're at. I just wanted to see where you're at. I want to help you learn to articulate that somebody's sexual preference doesn't necessarily have anything to do with their work performance, and it's not going to have anything to do with their work performance. It's about ethical decisions they make, right?
Yeah.
Different departments have different attitudes, and his question was, don't the feds require you to be at least a year away? The feds will require you to be a year or more away from marijuana and 5 or more away from the harder drugs, cocaine or anything. And I think that's pretty liberal myself. I'm not sure if I were a sheriff or a chief that I would be, now the marijuana, maybe, but the hard, like cocaine, I'm not sure 5 years I would be real comfortable with.
Yeah.
Because a recovering addict at 5 years is still very susceptible.
Yeah, they still have a recurring rate at 5 years.
Right, and not that I'm bashing them, I'm just saying, me personally, I think 5 years is pretty liberal.
I
For
agree
hard
with
drugs, I would probably look at more like about 10 years or so if I were doing it. You're 10 to 15, because we want to establish a pattern. So now let's switch gears a minute before we jump into the notes. He was talking about the mass shootings. Tell us about the mass shootings that you watched.
Well, there was the one in Ohio, you had one in Kentucky, and there was another one, or was it Alabama?
I seen the one in Ohio. Tell me about all 3 of them. Tell me what you know.
The one in Kentucky was 5 people, happened yesterday or the night before. The one in Ohio was, 8 people were shot, execution style.
Right.
Come to find out it was a big pot grove.
Oh, is that what I heard them talk about it this morning on the news on my way to work, but they still didn't have they were suspecting some sort of gang or drug use, but they didn't know for sure.
Well, and see, there's a whole lot going on in Ohio right now about the marijuana situation, because they voted here this past year to legalize, and their polls showed before the vote like 80% of the population supported it. Well, then come down to the vote, and it lost by this great landslide. So now they protested that vote and everything, and found out that it was rigged. So there's a big ordeal going on up there, and that's what they think it's playing with is, those kind of issues there.
Right. And so, but now the Ohio shooting, it was more than one location. There's 8 dead, more than one location, and they suspected more than one shooter. Is that right?
Yeah, there was 3 locations, all family members.
Yeah, right. And whoever this was did have a conscience, because there was at least 3 small children that they left alive, right?
Yep.
The report I saw last night said that they actually killed one of the women standing right next to the crib with her infant son in it. She was standing right there when they killed her, and I'm sure she was begging for the child's life. But they killed her and left the child alive.
Are the ones that lived, are they okay?
The children, yeah, they didn't shoot them, but they did kill all of the adults, 8 adults. So, but now we're suspecting in this mass shooting that we're talking about drugs, we're talking about marijuana, we may be talking about some type of gang involvement there. All right, tell me about the one in Kentucky.
I really didn't see a whole lot about it. I just seen there was 5 killed, and they didn't have a suspect yet.
Wow, no suspect. Was it at a private residence or a public place?
Private residence.
All right, we need to research that one and talk about that one on Thursday a little bit more. And where was the other one? Mississippi?
somewhere down south. I was thinking Alabama, Mississippi.
Anybody know anything about that one? None of us have heard about that one yet. I need to look at it. The one in Ohio was the one that surprised me, though, that they have no leads. They have that much shooting, they have that much carnage, they have that much activity and no leads. How does that happen? How can that happen? Say again?
Like, that's not the word, pre-organized, they did it before, what's the word?
They were pretty organized. I'll give them that. They had a plan of action. There was no doubt. But what else happens in the situation like that?
their response time.
Well, and I'd say there was nobody left alive to notify the police, so I'd say the response time was probably terrible. My first thought on that is that because there was no phone calls made saying, hey, we have a man with a gun here, what does that imply about the relationship between the victims and the shooters? Yeah, they all knew each other, right? At some point there was a relationship, there was a comfortability there. And the shooters took advantage of that comfortable relationship, or that familiar relationship. I won't say comfortable, maybe comfortable is not the right word, but familiar relationship.
Were all the victims of that shooting related to one
Yes,
another?
they were all family.
All family.
All family. They were all family.
As of last month, there had been 66 deaths and 176 injuries in mass shootings this year alone in the nation.
Right. Scary times. And here's the thing. I think when they find this one's going to go out of. It may qualify as mass shooting, but it's going to go into a more generalized gang drug category. It's not going to fall under like a Columbine or a Virginia Tech where there's no information that gives us why the person did what they did is going to be more obvious. I think this is going to have something to do with marijuana, specifically. So.
Wouldn't mass shooting be more of like a generalized? I mean, that sounds more like an assassination than it was anything.
According to the federal.
Obviously planned and with the same family and happened the same day.
Yes. According to the government's definition of mass shooting, that is an event where 3 or more people die, and that's pretty broad. So I think it's going to fall into that mass shooting category, but more specifically, I'm like you. I think it's going to be a crime that's going to be tied to the marijuana and to gangs or to marijuana production. It's going to be something to do with drugs. It's not going to be. I don't think we'll ever be able to tie it to a Columbine or a Virginia Tech or a Aurora theater shooting where somebody's acting on an ideology. I think these people were acting on some type of motivation for drugs or money, more along the lines of a traditional crime, if that makes sense. All right, let's jump back into media. I got a few things I want to throw out to you here about the media. My plan of action is I want to give notes today. I want to finish up notes on Thursday. I originally thought I was going to test on this and then the exam, but I'm not going to, unless you all just absolutely want one. I think what I'm going to do is I'll finish up on Thursday. Tuesday and Thursday we'll review for the exam. And then the exam will be the following week. Here's my question. I can do this one of two ways. I may try to create a game for study, which would allow us to gather some bonus points for the exam as we compete. Or I can just give you all a study sheet and ask you a bonus question on the test. And I can give you the information, y'all can write it down, we can study that way, and then I'll give you some type of really, really obscure, difficult bonus question for the test. Y'all think about it, we'll talk about it more on Thursday. On Monday night, we're gonna play a little game, kind of like a Jeopardy game, to do some review for the Monday night exam, and I'm gonna see how that goes, but I think it'll be a lot of fun. Anyway, I want to give you a couple of case studies. Case study number 1 shows how the news and media can create an event. In 1979, A nationally televised report indicated that a company called TMI faced considerable uncertainty and danger of one of the worst nuclear power plant accidents of the atomic age. The specter was raised of perhaps the next most serious of the nuclear catastrophes, with massive release of radioactive water, even larger than Chernobyl. There was an anonymous contributor from the company called TMI who was giving this misinformation to the public. The spokesperson for TMI was not prepared and did not anticipate all of this, and they were not prepared to deal with the public about the serious and prolonged nuclear incident. They offered explanations that were, they meaning TMI. TMI offered explanations that were confusing and at odds with the news media. The news media then added to the chaos by continuing to sensationalize the story. The news reports made TMI look like they were covering up industry abuses. And because they were giving out very complicated, confusing statements, the public became almost on the edge of hysteria. And this happened in California. And what year did I tell you? 79. In reality, what happened was they had a small incident. During that small incident, they contained it quickly. They stopped it. There was no ever any danger to the public. They had to shut down one of the reactors for a period of time, got everything straightened back out, got it all back up and running. It was never a catastrophe. But the news media created a catastrophe. And what contributed to the catastrophe from TMI? Anybody?
Misinformation.
Well, yeah.
Using information.
Right. And that's where I wanted you to go. As police officers, and we're going to deal with our news media, we have to know 2 or 3 things. First of all, be clear, be concise, and know that the news media does not understand when we start talking in police jargon. TMI took the stage and they began to talk in science speak. Y'all know what I mean? Like 2 scientists would meet in a room and start talking about a problem. It kind of reminds me of watching Big Bang Theory whenever those 2 guys meet and start talking science, and you're watching the TV going, all right, get to the next funny part because I don't know what this is. And it's the same thing. They came out and started talking in science speak to the reporters, expecting those reporters to be able to digest what they were saying. It didn't happen. So by using science speak and using very educated examples and words, they actually compounded the confusion. So sometimes, like in my report writing class, you got to use the KISS method. Y'all know what that is? There you go. Use the KISS method when you're dealing with the public and the news media. Don't add fuel to the fire by using police speak, if you will, police jargon, legal terms, legalese. Talk to them as though they know nothing about what's going on. One of the, and I know it's not exactly the same, but one of the best news conferences I've seen in a while is the sheriff of the county there in Minnesota where Prince passed away. Did you all see that? His where he got in front of the microphones and did his little talk. He was articulate. He was simple. He was open and honest, or as open and honest as he could be. He just did an excellent job. He did an excellent job. If y'all get a chance, you need to watch it. It's not, and I know he was talking about Prince's death, and it's not the same thing as dealing with a media catastrophe, but here he is, the sheriff in a Minnesota rural kind of area that don't get much national media attention, and all of a sudden he's got a bank of national media in front of him and all those microphones. He did a great job handling that. Kept it simple, directed to the point, clear and concise, appeared to be open and honest, and moved right through it. All right. All right, here's the next one is the Trade Center bombing. The World Trade Center bombing that happened the first time. In 1993, the bombing of the World Trade Center. The actions of the media had a powerful effect on three distinct groups of people and illustrated in different ways. I know you all may or may not remember that. Do you remember when the terrorists drove the Ryder truck down into the basement, the parking garage of the World Trade Center, and tried to blow it up? Mm-hmm. So this is not 9/11 where they flew the planes into it. This is where they tried to blow it up from the ground up. Radio and television served as source of emergency information for victims before and during the evacuation of the towers. Second, in some cases, the media hindered an investigation as they did their jobs. And third, the press reports on one explosion played a role in determining how the general public reacted to the situation, thus increasing or decreasing the likelihood of mass panic. Many of the victims trapped inside the World Trade Center after the bombing were able to watch television news, listen to radio broadcasts, and even call newscasters directly. The media was able to give people a wide range of emergency information. Throughout the afternoon and evening, New York City newscasters gave out emergency phone numbers, urged calm for those trapped inside, and praised the work of the city's emergency crews. The New York Times wrote, the day after the explosion, the efforts of the television studios to provide information to the victims in New York and similar efforts in Oklahoma City to locate the relatives of the injured and collect relief supplies, examples of how mass media can alleviate suffering and promote rescue operations, which is a good thing. But now we're going to get into some of the things they didn't do good. In contrast, more harmful episodes took place when the media reports revealed that investigators had linked the World Trade Center explosion to a yellow Ford van rented from a Ryder franchise in New Jersey. Now follow me here. The report did not name the man who had rented the van, but it did report the address of the Ryder office and the fact that the van had been reported stolen. The report forced investigators to arrest Mohammed Salim immediately, although they would have preferred to keep him under surveillance in the hopes that he would lead them to his co-conspirators. The arrest caused a possible lead to other suspects and demonstrated the ability of news to force the hand of an investigator in the midst of their work. So it may have taken us, if ever, much, much longer to have figured out who the co-conspirators were in the World Trade Center bombings because of the immediate reporting of the news media. Now, was there intent to do harm? Absolutely not. Was there intent to mess up the investigation? Absolutely not. They're trying to be the first to break that story. And herein is where that tension lies. They want to break the story. They want to push the ratings. But the truth of the matter is the investigators really needed to sit on this guy for a day or two in hopes that he would lead them back to the co-conspirators. I'd say the truth of the matter is, if we really knew that in Brussels, where the airport and the bus station blew up, they probably were very, very deliberate in waiting to see if they could get those guys with their co-conspirators and not arrest them immediately after the bomb went off. It's just my guess. Finally, the general tone of the bombing coverage varied greatly among media outlets. Predictably, the tabloid press displayed the greatest tendency to play to readers' fears. The military offered journalists the opportunity to undergo a period of boot camp style training before going into a combat zone. And this kind of switches into another where they put the embedded soldiers, but that's the one I want to talk to you. So here's what we need to know. Police awareness, public awareness is critical during a crisis. Preparedness is a necessary ingredient. And who helps us prepare the public in a crisis? The media. We have to have that partnership. Whether it's a tornado, hurricane, earthquake, Twin Towers bombing, Murrah Federal Building bombing, whatever, we need the news media to help us. We need that relationship. And we can't develop that relationship immediately. That relationship has to be cultivated over a period of time. One of the methods that we have that creates some opportunities for us to develop a relationship is our community policing model. Philadelphia is one of the first cities to use its community policing model to build that relationship with the press. Recently, the police commissioner of Philadelphia explained that his openness to information sharing between police and community thwarted a public outcry over a police shooting. Synchronized systematic reactions to a crisis involving public response stop public panic. Community policing was introduced to the Philadelphia Police Department in the 1980s. And it tells us that there are several things that the police need to do. There are about 10 of them. I'm sorry, there are 8 of them. The community model of policing says the police need to, number 1, reduce the tension between the police and the media. Work proactively to reduce the tension between police and media. Number 2, collaborate with stakeholders during a crisis. Collaborate with stakeholders during a crisis. Number 3, maintain the partnership even during lull times, even when there's periods of time that you're not actively seeking the media's help with a crisis, right? Maintain that relationship. And I know that sounds easy, but it's not. Maintaining a healthy relationship with anybody takes effort and work, let alone maintaining a healthy relationship with the news media. Create a reservoir of goodwill for the public. I would change that. I would let you know that sounds like something different. Here's what I would call it: paying it forward. Y'all ever heard of that? Paying it forward? If you, as police officers, are paying it forward, creating that goodwill, if you are being transparent and doing the little things well, when a crisis happens, the public's more likely to give you a little leeway. If you're not, and you're secretive, and you're shifty, whenever the crisis happens, the public is not inclined to give you any leeway. Establish firm guidelines agreed to by police and media. Recognize the media's impact on the public. I recently got schooled in some problem solving. I've been to all kinds of problem solving seminars and critical conversation workshops and all of these things. And when you're in a situation where you're having a disagreement with somebody or you're trying to establish a rapport with somebody, the first thing you need to do is acknowledge the differences between you, right? Acknowledge them. I understand that you've got a story to do and that you feel like the public needs to know and that you have ratings that you have to keep up. But I want you to understand I have a certain amount of limitations to the information I can give you because, right? Acknowledge those differences. Practice crisis communication. Practice crisis communication. It's not easy. Communication. I guess the best example I have to give you to that is when Mr. Fox came in here the other day and he talked to you about all of the things that went on with the almost hospital shooting over here at Bluefield Regional. And he talked about, you know, a lot of the little things that he talked about, all the way from what was reported to the hospital to what got reported to the police department to how they gave it to their officers and how the officers responded. You could tell in there, and I'm not being critical, I'm just being honest, you could tell in there that not only had the hospital not practiced critical communication, but also the police department had not necessarily practiced that critical communication. Because there were some communication breakdowns that went on in that whole situation that could have gotten things really out of hand had cooler heads not prevailed. So you have to practice that. Establishing a training curriculum enhancing police and media relations. Creating a training curriculum that enhances police and media relationship. Now, according to my notes, there are 10 things that needs to happen inside this training program. 10 things. It's called the 10 C's of good communication. So under the training program, you got 10 C's of communication. Be cooperative. Provide control. Be cooperative. Provide control. Number 3, show care and concern. Be cooperative. Provide control. show care and concern. Number 4,
Concern one.
yeah, care and concerns, number 3. Number 4, exhibit competence. What does that mean?
Your ability to do the job?
That's right. You are a trained professional. Show it. Excellent. Number 5, be credible. Be credible. Now listen, folks, I'm going to tell you this. I've told you this when we talked about courtroom testimony. I told you this in different classes, and I'm going to tell you this today. I'm going to tell you all the way through. I'll repeat them again if you missed one. All right. But I will tell you this all the way. There is nothing wrong with not knowing the answer to a question. Don't give people a bunch of crap. If you don't know, look at them and say, I don't know, but I'll find the answer and get back to you. Right? Don't tell people a bunch of stuff that's not true and then get that label put on you. There's nothing wrong from a professional standpoint of saying, I'm not sure, I don't know, I'll find out and get back to you. People have a whole lot more respect for somebody like that than they do somebody who says, oh yeah, I know the answer to that, no problem. Because the issue is, you develop a reputation as not being trustworthy. And you want to be credible. Number 6, be consistent. Be consistent. Number 7 goes along with number 6, be clear. Use that KISS method, be clear. Keep it simple. Stay away from police jargon. Number 8, be factual. They use the word concise. Be concise. Be factual. Number 9, be current. And number 10, keep everybody calm. Say again? Oh, I'd say that's an excellent chance that'll be a bonus question somewhere. Hear out the other person. Listen carefully to their question. Don't interrupt or jump to conclusions. Try to empathize when you can. Repeat back to them what they've said. I usually will use the phrase a lot of times. So what I hear you saying is, and repeat it back. Validate what they've said. Get rid of any misinformation. And then begin to resolve or minimize the problem. Yes, it's hot in here. It's miserable. Community policing is an example of police-public partnership that aims to reduce negative reaction to either party and increase trust and confidence. So know that community policing is a police-public partnership that aims to, number 1, reduce negative reaction. Number 2, increase trust. And number 3, improve confidence in both the police and the media.
What was number 1?
Number 1 was to reduce negative reactions. All right. And that wraps me up for today with my notes. It gets me where I need to be for Thursday. I'm gonna let you all out just a few minutes early. It's about 15 till. Any questions, comments, observations, anything you all wanna cover? Any questions you have?
Yeah.
All right, where are you?
Number 6 on June, please.
I'm with you. Give me just a second.
I think. You just use Blackboard.
I wanna find it in my notes so I can make sure I'm, here it is. Oh, number 6. Yeah, recognize the media's impact on the public. Yeah, I was gonna read to you off the wrong list. All right, good. Any other questions? Yes,
When do
sir.
we get our tests back?
Hold on just a second. Say again.
Do you have the exam schedule?
I do have the exam schedule, but I didn't bring it for today. I think our exam is on, I'm afraid to say that because I looked, but I've forgotten.
It's on the Thursday.
Is it on Thursday?
Yeah.
All right. And it's,
I think,
do you
I
know
think
what
it's
time?
at 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
His test? No, that's one,
So it's in 2 weeks, in 2 Thursdays from now. Actually 3, because we got Thursday coming. It'll be 3 weeks, 3 Thursdays. Any other questions? You had a question, Beckley?
When are we gonna get our last test back?
You know what? I still had several people that needed to take it, but I think they're about all caught. They will all be caught up by Thursday. I'll try to give it back and we'll review it on Thursday. I had several people on this end that were absent. So as quick as I
Sounds like
can call
a
them,
plan.
hopefully we're gonna review it Thursday.
Alrighty.
All right, we'll see
You
y'all
have a
Thursday.
good one.
I didn't know that.
Back.
Andrew said that back to me.
How about 1:15?
I mean, I've got a hard copy on me, like, in my, I didn't know what he
I didn't hit
wanted.
the right freaking button.
Yeah. You wanna meet me over at the office? When can you meet me over there? About 1:15? Will that work? Okay, I'll try to, I'm going to get me about lunch. I'll try to be back by 1. All right? I'll try to be in the office there by 1.
Did my mom ever get a hold of you from state? I was like this.
Oh, she found it.
Yeah, I was like super sick, but
I've only got like 5
my
minutes
boss, our technical guy,
That's gonna
turned
pass
my
incredibly
lesson,
fast.
and he had passwords.
Fast
and
people are
everything, so I got to try and help him break into all
Did you
the
look
stuff.
at, the schedule?
Maybe tomorrow, tomorrow,
Tomorrow, Wednesday?
Yeah, be here after. I haven't either.
okay, I think that would work a lot better anyways for me. So is that okay? I'll come
Works.
1:30.
All right, we'll see y'all Thursday. Gentlemen, are my 2 surgery patients okay? I'm glad you're back, Mr. Primer. I'm glad you're doing better.
We'll see how good I'm doing this season.
Well, the first day back is slow. First day back is slow, big guy, but, and the biggest problem is you're just so fatigued for so long.
I tried coming to class last Tuesday, and I woke up and
it wasn't worth it. But they finally got all that fixed? How bad was the tear?
I had no tear,
Really?
not a single tear.
That's good, that's a good thing.
Yeah. The only thing is that hole in the bone that I was telling you about, it was deeper than he thought it was, so it took him long, it took 2 hours surgery.
Well, I hope you're gonna, I mean, it's gonna take months of rehab to fix that, you know that.
About 2 months.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be painful.
It'll be interesting. They gave me 800 ibuprofen and 40 oxys.
Be careful there. Be careful.
I took 2 of the oxycodone.
Yeah, I wouldn't take just enough to get me over the threshold and not quit.
Yeah, the first night,